G'day everyone, welcome back to the Cyber Minutes podcast. My name is Max, and this week we're joined by Flynn and our special guest Cameron, who is working in cybersecurity and has for a few years. Cameron, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. So I'm a 23-year-old engineer working in tech. I've worked at in the past as a security engineer, and I've also got some published research on top of a first class degree. And that's basically kind of my main aspect that I've done so far. And I currently help people land and break into tech as well, so land tech roles as well, along the side of my.
Beautiful. I guess we'll hop right into it. So, Cameron, we just want to ask, how did you originally get into cybersecurity? What was that initial pathway? What did that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in terms of my initial pathways, so I started off doing a lot of self-study and learning from like the ages of 17, mainly kind of like full time. I was doing A levels, just like your preliminaries before you go off to university. So I was doing that, and I was basically spending a lot of the time in my evenings self-studying, and that then led to an internship for my first before I started university. And then from there, it just kind of spiraled out of control, and then here I am.
Cool. Yeah, easy. And so, did you kind of have any specific sort of things that you tried to go for, tried to learn to get you into that first sort of role, that first internship? So you said you did some stuff before your prelims. What kind of stuff did you try out?
Yeah. So it's something that, in terms of what I did, it was a lot of self-study, and in terms of that, it was like watching YouTubers go through practical demonstrations of my technique and what to know. It was also learning from books, doing. So I also did my own YouTube, right? So I was learning from that. Any comments that I got, I used that as feedback to continue with my additional learning. I did basically like a whole bunch of stuff like that for about a whole year straight, into my evenings, more or less every single night. And alongside that, it's like you can do that, and that is great. But you also need to know where you're focusing your energy as well, right? So you need to know what kind of part of tech you want to go into, why you're passionate about that, all of those different types of things. And those are like what I call like the prerequisite questions that you do need to ask yourself before actually doing the self-study. Because, worst case scenario is you're going to be spending a whole year doing self-study for, say, software engineering, but realistically, your passion and interest is cybersecurity. So you've just wasted that time otherwise. So that's kind of like the self-study that I was doing. And then also some of the questions that you perhaps need to ask yourself as well if you are looking to break into the tech industry.
Yeah, yeah, totally makes sense. Did you know that you wanted to do cybersecurity straight away, or did you have a few different options that you were kind of tossing up between?
Yeah. So I knew from like an early age. So I knew from about the ages of 16 that I wanted to go into cybersecurity and specifically ethical hacking. I know like nowadays the industry standard term is pen testing, but back then I was just like, oh, hacking's so cool, this and that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, at 16, that's kind of when I got originally exposed to it. I had a mate in secondary school who kind of told me about it, told me what Kelly Linux is, and I was like, oh, what's that? He's like, oh, it's an operating system used for penetration testing. So I was like, okay, cool. And then for my 16th birthday, he actually got me. So I asked him for a USB with Kelly Linux on like a bootable USB so that I can actually use it to practice. And that was like my 16th birthday present from him. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then, once I got that USB, I was just non-stop on it all the time, in the evenings, sometimes in school, like literally just doing everything just to learn as much as possible about it.
I think I'll jump forward a bit because something you said resonated with me that to really focus on a path with your self study, which is something that we have kind of pointed out to people before. Especially when you see all these Hollywood hacking scenes, it looks so cool of people like, I want to do that, or I want to get into cybersecurity without recognizing that cybersecurity is so broad. You can get into ethical hacking, you can get into application security, you can do more GRC stuff. I mean, I think even in this call, we got three very different paths in security. Um, with that being said, what do you think are kind of the most valuable skills for somebody to pick up? Are there like any sort of underrated ones? What would you think people should sort of upskill into in today's market?
Yeah. So is it for like tech in general or cybersecurity specific?
Both. I'd say both cybersecurity and also AppSec. More your sort of field.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of cybersecurity, it is very important to know the foundation topic, which is networking, right? You need to understand how computer systems connect together and work with each other to send resources and data. If you're not too familiar with that, then you're not going to understand cybersecurity at a more deeper level because you're not really too sure where to kind of, where the connections are and how you can kind of, potentially compromise machines and stuff like that. And in terms of for like application security, you do need to be aware of web application pen testing attacks, right? So cross-site scripting, SQL injection, HTML injection. And one of the ways that I personally learned that was from something called OWASP Juice Shop. It's like an open source web application that you can run locally, and then you can test your penetration testing attacks. On the website, you can see how, can you bypass the login field? Can you change the password without needing to know the current one? Stuff like that. And that's ultimately where kind of a lot of my knowledge came from for application security as well. But there's also some other ones as well, right? So just kind of general ones like, scripting languages like Bash or PowerShell, and also coding, right? Like in terms of the roles that you're going to be having in the industry, you're going to be coding quite a lot. You're going to be building products and solutions. So actually knowing how to program is, of course, a key important aspect of it, because you actually do know how to build all those solutions, and then all it is just finding the blocks to put in place to actually build it.
Yeah, well said. I think that this actually leads pretty well into another question. Do you think in, I suppose, the UK job market, there's a lot of debate, especially a couple of years ago, about do you need to know how to code to get into cybersecurity? Generally speaking, I say you need to know at least the foundations, but it's not an absolute requirement. Like, for example, I'm in cybersecurity. I do a more GRC role. I do code a little bit. I have to look at things, but I could get by not knowing it. How important do you think it is to have that coding ability? Do you think it's absolute, you need to have it, or is it something that's going to take you to that sort of next level?
Yeah, so I agree in terms of learning the basics. I think it is important to know some level of aspects of programming for cybersecurity, right? It is basically just kind of like a new ability and skill set that you can have to make your whole job more efficient, right? You can build automation tools, you can do things like that. Yeah, so knowing the basics would be great. In terms of knowing more than the basics, well, I guess it kind of depends on the role, right? So like GRC, perhaps you may not be coding too much, but as a security engineer, you're typically coding quite a lot. So I think it does depend on the role, but of course, the more you know, the better. You don't really need to know like OOP or anything like that, like object-oriented programming. It's mainly just making sure that you can, do if-else statements, you can build functions, you can, integrate APIs or something like that, right? Just ultimately giving the features that you do need to accomplish some sort of solution or some sort of problem.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I kind of see and more identify with, is that you're going to be able to go further quicker if you know that stuff. It's going to help you out a lot more in the short and long term, straight off the bat. So we have another question just on getting into cybersecurity. So compared to other markets, how difficult in the UK is it actually as an industry to break into? Because over here, it's difficult because there's quite a lot of fresh new people coming out of university who are quite skilled trying to get into it. So there's a bit of competition, but there's still quite a lot of jobs around. And if you really try and, get that first 6 months year internship down, it's still very possible for a lot of people. Is that kind of similar to how it would be in the UK as well? Or what are the differences you see there?
Yeah, so in terms of the tech job market for the UK, it is incredibly competitive, and it's even to the point where the salaries are now lowering just because there's so much supply, right? So like the average entry level salary is like, it can go as low as like 20K, something like that, which is, I don't know what that is in other currencies, but yeah, it's pretty low. It's basically any other job outside of tech, right? So in terms of breaking in, there is a lot of competition. The salaries, for some companies are low as well due to that supply. But ultimately, if you do have the right skill sets, you do have the right strategies, you can break into it relatively quickly and easily. As I did at 17, right? But it does, of course, depend on, what information that you have at hand, what skill sets that you have, who you're learning from, that kind of aspect. But yeah, in terms of breaking in, it's pretty hard. And 100% with the university stuff as well. Every single year, there's like tens of thousands of university graduates for computer science. So that basically makes it so companies can then just hire those people who are brand new to the industry for a lot less, rather than someone who's got a few years experience or someone who's actually doing self-study but didn't go to university. So yeah, 100%. It's basically the same. Yeah.
I think it might sound a little bit different. One problem we do have in Australia with cybersecurity specifically, I think Max was talking more broad tech in general. We do have a lot of tons of jobs going in cybersecurity, but most of them aren't entry level. Especially with Australia, companies aren't as mature, companies aren't as large, so they're not really willing to take a chance on a graduate a lot of the time. So there is a lot of opportunity in cybersecurity, but you have to have that sort of foot in the door initially, which is the problem a lot of people have. They're kind of sold this, I suppose, lie with a degree that you're going to get it and you're going to get a job immediately as you come out. And a lot of people find that doesn't happen. Is that sort of resonate with you as well, or would you say it's a bit different?
I'd say that's relatively the same. Yeah. So in terms of university, they do kind of prey on 18-year-olds to kind of know exactly what they're going to be doing in the future, and then kind of like they're not guaranteeing a job, right? But they're acting like they do. So that's kind of what brings them into the door. You're there for like a year or two, then you're realizing you're not learning what you need to, and then you're thinking of dropping out, but then you've already spent 2 years there, so it's kind of not really worth it if you do. So then you end up getting a degree, and then you're like, okay, great, now I'm ready for the job market. But then all of these companies aren't hiring. So, well, I mean, they are, but they're not hiring you, right? So it's like it's one of those situations for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I now do coaching, right? To help people do that, because universities just kind of fail in that process.
100%. One of the bigger things that was kind of told in the Australian media, I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK, was about this job shortage in Australia. So they say a cybersecurity job shortage. You heard it everywhere in uni. There was, all over the news everywhere. But what they didn't say is the shortage was for skilled professionals. So people with 3 to 5 years or even more experience. So a lot of people came out of uni and, with no experience went, oh, great, job shortage, fantastic. And the job shortage wasn't for them. There was heaps of people also trying the same thing.
I see. Yeah. There's been stuff like that in the past, like for the UK, for like tech in general or cybersecurity. But yeah, it's like overall, it's like there's so much supply out there for computer science graduates or just people who are interested in breaking into tech. But basically, if the skill sets aren't there, then the companies aren't really that interested, which is, of course, a shame, because they should, of course, look into upskilling people, right? But of course, if you don't have the skill sets to do the job, then there's also no point in hiring. So
yeah, exactly. And so with that, what are some of the common things that people can dodge that maybe you've seen it in your own experience that make their own lives more difficult? So is there anything you'd recommend to avoid doing when trying to break into the industry?
Yeah. So there's something that I talk about kind of at length on my LinkedIn, but it's avoiding kind of pitfalls in your mindset and beliefs when you're trying to break into tech. So, let's say that you apply for 10 roles for a, graduate role in tech or something like that, right? Let's say you get 8 emails back, which are just rejection letters, rejection emails or phone calls from recruiters, and then the other 2 just ghost you. It's very easy to kind of fall into the pitfall and the limiting belief of having like a victim mindset, like, oh, I'm never going to be hired. This is never going to be the case for me. Everybody else is getting hired, but not me. Why me? That kind of stuff. Now, all that's going to be doing is preventing that person from moving forward and actually breaking into the industry, because you already have that belief instilled within you from that point. So like, let's say that you did get an interview, like you're only going to be talking poorly about your skill sets and yourself in the interview, but also having at the back of your mind that, oh, I may not get this anyway, so why even try? So that's one of the main things I see all of the time. And also another one is going to be talking poorly about your hiring requirements, right? Because on LinkedIn, it's very common to see, oh, this company's hiring I don't know, a mid-level role for 2 years experience. That's so absurd, that's outrageous, this and that, right? But if you look at it from a perspective of a company, they're going to be seeing you talk poorly about other companies. So do you think those companies are going to want to hire you, knowing that they could be that other company's shoes at some point in the future if you're not 100% happy with everything that they're doing. So I think those are going to be the two main kind of mistakes and pitfalls that people will typically fall into when trying to break into tech. And it's not their fault, right? But it's important to be aware and conscious of your mindset and also what you're actively doing and the perception that you have for companies, recruiters, or just anybody in the industry in general as well.
Yeah, that second point is incredibly important. And, another way to phrase it is your brand image and, your kind of your reputation. If you're a bit of a loudmouth on social media and you're, talking badly about companies and, you're having a go at everyone else, it's not a good look. So keeping it as clean as possible is probably better than, doing too much, especially when you're trying to get in. Just shut up. Essentially, until you got a foot in the door, just shut up.
Yeah, it is a pro. I saw this the other day. I think I spoke to Max about it a while ago. Where was literally that instance somebody was saying bad about recruiting in general. And look, what they were saying wasn't necessarily wrong, but I was reading it and I was like, if I was going to hire somebody, this is just not a great look. Like, how can I know that you're going to be a team player?
Yeah.
There's going to always be issues within a team. There's always going to be some drama at some point that comes up, and I need to know that there's like resilience within you to sort of, I suppose, put up with it to a degree. It doesn't mean we don't have to point out things that are bad within the industry, but especially when you're trying to get your foot in the door, it's kind of important.
Yeah. And another thing is, so you mentioned sort of bad mindsets that people are going to have, or some bad kind of conceptions they can have when trying to look for roles. What's like some really bad advice that you hear as well that or that you see in action that people do? So a bit further down from what people are actually saying on social media or what their mindset is, what are some of the wrong things they can be doing when preparing to break in?
Yeah, so I think one of the first ones that comes to mind is going to be follow your passions, right? And there's a caveat to that, right? You can follow your passions, but normally there's some sort of requirements for doing that if you actually want to be successful and break into the industry. So the first one is going to be making sure that you're doing it in one that's actually got good career progression. So if your passion is let's say cybersecurity, there's good career progression there. The salaries are good so you can pay your bills. Passion in and of itself does not pay bills, right? So or it depends on your bills, right? But most times it doesn't. So you do need to have some sort of place where you're like, right, I'm passionate about this. Can I actually sustain a career in this for the long term without having to juggle 2 or 3 jobs on the side just to basically make ends meet? I think that's something that's important. And then another one would also be to invest into yourself, right? So your self-development, your knowledge, your learning. Now you can invest in various different ways, right? You can invest in your time. So that's what I was doing at 17, just basically learning as much as possible. You can also invest with your finances. So if you've got like a self-development budget, then you can get, certifications, you can get courses, you can get coaching, things that can ultimately help you in the long run, which can basically fast track your progress into the industry. It took me 4 years to break into Apple as an engineer. And if I had like a mentor at like 17, like someone who said, do this, no, don't do that, Cameron, this and that, right? Then I would have got there like, in 2 years, something crazy like that. So the power of actually investing into yourself and getting the right knowledge, and the ones that aren't, they may not always be free, right? The free ones are a good start, but the paid ones is really where it's at because, there's more effort put into it. The supply and demand as well, right? Like if it's paid, there's going to be people who just simply don't want it. So if you're one of those who actually is willing to invest into yourself, no matter the cost, then realistically, that is where you're going to get the best advice and the best guidance to break into tech.
Yeah, I think that pretty much is spot on. You have to, especially investing in yourself, that's very important. Investing in certs, investing in things that are going to push you forward. And it kind of makes sense as well where, when looking for your passions and trying to get work in your passions, there's a sense of compromise where you have to, weigh up, is it going to make me money? Is it practical to actually go in there? Like if I want to be a goat farmer, it's probably not the most practical thing as a person living in the suburbs to try and go and pursue that. Or even in some cases where, say you have a great passion to do psychology or business, right? That might be a degree you'd want to pursue, but generally being a psychologist, there's so much competition. There's so many people that do psychology degrees at university. What you could even do is pivot into where can you use the things that you want to do with that passion, so the psychology stuff, in a role that might not exactly be psychology. So it's kind of compromising on what you want to do with what roles you can apply that in. So yeah, that's really, really good advice.
That also
I'm all doom and gloom. If you have a passion for something and you know and you can see how to make it work, you can chase it as well. Like that's a thing that's okay to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I got pretty lucky with the universe to give me a passion that pays pretty well. So yeah, that was not too bad. But yeah, in terms of like the psychology thing, that is accurate. I got like a story about that. So when I was in university for the first year, it was in university dorms, and basically they segregate or like section off certain parts of the floor, right? And I was with like 7 other people, and there was me and some girl who was doing accounting. And other than that, everybody else, like the other 6 or something, they're all doing psychology, right? So it's an incredibly saturated field. And I think it's like they want to become like psychologists. I think that's like the general kind of memo or something like that. But because everybody wants that, supply and demand, it just basically creates it almost impossible for anybody who isn't willing to sacrifice like 12 hours a day to try to get it.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's other jobs that you can do that use that level of psychology that may not exactly be a psychologist, where, that's that compromise you have to make.
100%.
With that, what does sort of a typical day in the life of Cameron look like? Are you basically around the clock working at your computer?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of when I was at Apple, so yeah, I guess full disclaimer, of course, my own opinions, I'm not endorse anything like that, right? But when I was at Apple, I was, doing my 9 to 5, like basically, on the day to day. I was in 2 different teams, right? So I guess it kind of depends because I had a shift pattern for one of the roles. So the 2 roles that I had was I was a SOC analyst there for about 8 months. So actually triaging alerts, identifying threats, remediations, and things like that. And I was on a shift pattern, so Sunday to Wednesday. So that was a bit of a nice change to have. And then from there, I moved into vulnerability response. So I was handling the back end of Apple's bug bounty program. I was responding to researchers, pushing for fixes and remediations, and also doing some DevSecOps projects work as well. In terms of like my day to day, so it was a hybrid model. So I would wake up, Mondays and Fridays would be remote. But if it was Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays, I'd then go into the office. And overall, I really did enjoy the role. I learned a whole bunch from it, and there was plenty of opportunities and room for growth. So, if you wanted to grow in a certain area, you just speak to your manager and see what kind of projects are on the backlog, so then you can pick up. So yeah, it was really great. And in terms of now, so it's a slightly different. So application security, still doing vulnerability management and response, but some application security there as well. And it's also a hybrid model. So Mondays and Fridays are remote, and then I go into the office. And in terms of my kind of, I guess, day to day, like I'm basically doing similar stuff, right? But in terms of the stuff that I'm doing additional to that, I'm also having, calls in the evening with people for, my coaching, or I'm going to Muay Thai, which is kickboxing, Thai kickboxing, or I'm going to the gym. I've got a booster board, which is quite an interesting hobby. It's basically an electronic skateboard that goes up to like 40 miles an hour. So sometimes I ride that as well. But yeah, it kind of does depend on the day. But typically, I spend a lot of time doing the work that I know I need to do. And then after that, I then use that free time as a reward to do something that I want to do after actually completing all of the tasks for the day.
Yeah, sounds good. Excellent. Yeah. And are there any recent trends in tech or cybersecurity, maybe that kind of sphere a little bit more, that have sort of caught your eye? Maybe you see them as emerging or a bit interesting that that maybe we're not hearing so much about. Obviously, there's AI and stuff like that going on, but is there anything a little bit more niche that you've seen that that could be something for people to look at?
Yeah, so I would say that looking into zero-day vulnerability is something that is very important to be familiar with, right? You need to know what zero days are, what vulnerabilities are, and finding out how to reproduce them is something that would really help someone stand out for cybersecurity roles. So nothing really specific, but 0 days in general. If you can look at like a post or something, go to the proof of concept, understand the proof of concept, so like the code that actually exploits it, and then see if you can perhaps try it yourself, if of course you have permission, or build your own proof of concept, right? Then that would be a really good way of actually standing out and showcasing you've got real world practical experience.
Yep.
And also something additional to learn as well. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of roles as well in the UK, so in Australia, at the moment, there's a big like mix between pretty much three roles. It's SOC analyst, there's engineer, and GRC specialist, so governance, risk, compliance. Those are kind of the big three where 90% of the roles you're going to see on job websites are going to be one of those three. Is that similar in the UK, or is it a little bit more focused on one, do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty much the same mix. So you'll have a lot of SOC analyst roles like all of the time. There won't always be SOC analyst roles though. They won't be called that, but they are. So like detection and response analyst or detection engineer, stuff like that. So a lot of them can be summed up to be SOC analyst. You've also got, I think pen testing is like a very important one. That's kind of like the ones that in the UK a lot of people want to go into. It's mainly either SOC analyst or pen testing. So that's another one that's very, common. Yeah, security engineering in general. It's quite a broad title, but overall that's of course one of the big ones as well. And then also just stuff, yeah, like with like AI security or like cloud infrastructure as well. Those roles typically are kind of attracting more people that I'm seeing now over time, opposed to 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting because yeah, in Australia there is a little bit of a market for pen testing, but outside of the big four consulting companies, so PwC, what are they? PwC, KPMG, and then Deloitte, and the other one, EY. There you go.
Well,
Aside from those, there's not really a huge amount of pen testing roles that you see. There's a couple here and there, but they're all fairly niche. Most of it in Australia is generally outsourced. That's kind of the shtick that I've seen, is that most of it's kind of sent elsewhere to be done, if it's overseas or those consulting companies. Is that the same in the UK, or is there a bit more of a market for it?
Yeah, I think in the UK there's a bit more of a market for it, especially if you factor in cybersecurity consultants. So basically just like consultancy firms that outsource pen testing from a company to you, and then you deal with that as a client or for the client. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the pen testing roles are. So like in the consultancies, but of course, you do have ones for like governments and stuff like that, but that's not really typically where the money is at. It's normally at the private consultancies, but I guess it depends on what people are looking for. So
yeah, from my experience, pen testing is sort of a field, like you said before. Everybody wants to get into it because of that. It's a little bit saturated, which is a shame because, a lot of pen testers I mean stuff. They're some of the most brilliant people in the world, but then you kind of look at their roles and it's, quite frankly, it's a bit underpaid just because everybody wants to do it.
yeah, so it can get like that for sure. And it's also, so like it's a saturation problem with people who want to break into the industry, right? Like break into pen testing roles. And then once you're actually in the pen testing roles, you're now competing with other pen testers, for salary increases, for that promotion, whatever it may be. So yeah, it's kind of similar over here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Something else. So, do you have any sort of stories of people breaking into cybersecurity, or things you've seen in the industry, or interesting trends, or anything else that you'd be keen to share? It could be anecdotes, or it could be things that you've heard or things that you've seen. Anything interesting that sort of might catch our viewers' attention a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of, let's have a look. Yeah, so in terms of my first internship, I'll kind of talk a little bit about story about how I actually managed to get that, and then how some of the viewers can get one of those as well. So the way I kind of bring it together is you've got direct and indirect opportunity. So with direct opportunities, they are the ones that are directly in front of you, the ones that you can actually see. So for example, like a job application or posting, someone offering you a job, something like that. And the indirect ones are the ones that you can't actually see, but it could be really anything in the future that leads on from a direct opportunity. So I'll give you an example. So when I was 17, it was like 8 p.m. at night. I was kind of a bit bored. I didn't know what to do with my time. I think I was on Netflix. So I was like, okay, let's go on LinkedIn. So I was actually kind of putting in that work in the evenings. So I was on LinkedIn. I was just scrolling through. I saw a job posting for a Linux engineer role. I was 17. I was still in full-time education, and then I was planning to go off to university. I couldn't have redone it, but I still thought, you know what, I'll apply anyway and just kind of see what happens. So I applied, and then a few days later, a few days go by, didn't hear anything, thought, okay, nothing's happened there. And then a day after that, I then got an email saying that they want to interview. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I was kind of, didn't really know what to say, what to do, because I was like, I don't have any experience with Linux engineer roles. I've only been using Klinux for about a year now, maybe two. So I was like, okay, well, let's just do the interview and let's see what comes from it. So I had the interview. It was a lot of questions about, Linux engineering, but I was answering it from a perspective of pen testing, since that was my ideal niche, and that's kind of what I was learning, like basically, in my evenings, most of the nights. So I was answering from that perspective, and the guy just like straight was like, look, I don't think you're role since Linux engineering. However, we are starting up an internship program for cybersecurity, which is specifically for penetration testing. Would you like me to refer you? So, and that was like in the middle of the interview. So, oh yeah, sure, that'd be great. And then a few days later, I get an email from HR saying they're going to fast track me for an in-person interview in their offices. So I went all the way up to London. I sat down in front of 3 people at 17, and I was answering all these questions, which is a bit nerve-wracking, I'm not going to lie. But overall, it did well, and then I managed to get that offer. So in terms of that, the direct opportunity was the Linux engineer role, that job posting that I saw. The indirect one would be the one that I wouldn't have ever seen if I never even applied to it, which was the actual internship itself. So I got the internship at 18. That's when I originally started the internship. And I wouldn't have ever been able to get that if I didn't actually think, okay, let's actually try my luck. Let's actually test it. Let's see if I can actually get this Linux engineer role. And that actually led to an even better opportunity, more aligned with my passions and interests by the end of it. So I guess like the key takeaway here would be to make sure that you are definitely work. I could have, of course, not been on LinkedIn in my evenings, and I wouldn't have ever found that job posting. So I think that would have been a good idea. And also to make sure that you are taking any opportunities that you have directly in front of you, because you're not sure of where they can lead into the future. Like, for example, when I got the internship, I was never thinking in a million years that would have actually contributed to me getting into Apple, right? That would be an indirect opportunity from the internship. So it's just making sure that, one, you are putting in the effort and the work, and two, you are making sure that you are taking any direct opportunities in front of you, with the anticipation of them leading to indirect opportunities in the future.
Yeah. Oh, that's super powerful and 100% right. Yeah, there's a real case to be made for just chasing every opportunity that comes your way. Something else you can do is like networking with people as well. That's another really strong way, going to conferences, talking to people, and not just being a bit of a dick at conferences and saying, hi, give me a LinkedIn, and then, pissing off. But making those connections with people, like genuine connections, is really good. And chasing any opportunity, because you never know what will happen if you just go for something, and you could find something, later down the line, exactly like what happened there. So butterfly effect is a powerful thing, where one small thing you do easily can lead into something more substantial in the future. Yeah, that's a really good example.
Yeah, so I actually think like people severely underestimate how much they can actually learn, right? It's like you can basically learn anything you want in life. It just comes down to your willingness and consistency to do so. So I'll give you an example. So when I was in university, I got a publication of research. So like research in the field of computer science, cybersecurity. However, I had no previous experience with that. I didn't know what I was doing. I just simply applied because my mate told me to. And I had like an interview. So I basically just kind of spoke about some general cyber stuff, and then I was given the offer. So I was like, right, well, now I've got this sort of like research kind of, it was like, I felt like a PhD role, but I was in a bachelor's, right? But I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? Because I'm kind of out of my depth here. So I just basically put in the work to learn what I needed to job. And that's one of the key aspects I think people who are trying to break into the industry underestimate their current skill sets. It's of course important to make sure that you are learning over time and you're developing your skill sets over time. But it's also important to realize that if you do have an in-demand skill set, or just really anything in general that can help you learn anything you want in life, then you can ultimately achieve anything you want. And that's something that I think is kind of pulled out of people when you're working in corporate. It's like the ability to not be able to do what you aspire to do. And it's something that that's basically one of the main things that I kind of live by. Like I can achieve anything that I want, and it could be the exact same for anybody else. It's just down to if you're consistent with the work and if you're willing to put in the hard work and take any opportunity that you have at hand as well.
Going back to the indirect and direct stuff as well. For our viewers, we had a guest on a couple probably last year. This year's gone fast. But he's a recruiter, and he said that I could be butchering the statistic, but it's something like 60 to 70% of jobs in cyber come from a tap on the shoulder. It's not even the person that's necessarily hiring for the role. It's because somebody knows somebody, and if you never took that opportunity up, you may never have met a particular person. And as Max said, butterfly effect, you never would have actually landed that role. So yeah, talk to people, do dare to be great, I suppose. It's a bit corny, but yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And yeah, networking is a very powerful thing. Like you said, like 50, 60%, something crazy like that. So yeah, networking is very important. In terms of networking correctly, I think that's a similar conversation to be having, right? I get LinkedIn DMs all of the time saying, "Hi, can you refer me to Apple?" I don't even know this person at all. It's like, okay. But yeah, and or it's just like, yeah, people are asking for like my LinkedIn, or they're asking me for this and that. And it's like, they're not willing to, once again, put in the effort, put in the consistency to build up that rapport, build up that relationship, to actually have that connection. They just kind of want something for them, right? And the way that I personally do networking, right? I know, I've got connections in, Meta, fintech, directors, and this and that. But the way that I've connected with them, and this is based on my past, is I provide more than what I'm getting back, right? So I'm going to schedule around their time. I'm going to make sure that I'm picking up the bill whenever needed. I'm going to make sure that I'm asking about them, their life, their holidays that they've recently come back from. Like all of these things, making sure that they do feel valued, right? And that's not anything for my own personal gain. That's me taking it first. It's kind of like the way I perceive networking is like having friends, right? You go out to like, I don't know, the pub with your friends or something, and you have a nice laugh and a nice joke. You're not actively thinking and consciously being aware of, okay, they may get tapped, so therefore I'm going to be nice to them. That's the incorrect way of doing networking. So it's about what can you offer to them to build that connection up, build that rapport, build that relationship up without actually expecting anything back. And if you do get something back, then that's just a nice added bonus and benefit on top of it.
I mean, and people can see immediately if you are being fake as well. If you are taking that relationship of you're trying to land a job, it becomes so obvious, within the first meeting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you burn the connections very quickly if you do that, right? It's like if you genuinely like. So I've been to a fair few like networking events. If you go to the networking events with the like zero kind of self-fulfilling anything like results, just going there to have those conversations, communicate with people, see where people are working, and just talk to them about that, right? And show an interest in them. That actually does 10 times better than any referral could ever do. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I was telling someone the other day, everybody always hears about the next role, whereas if you just have a beer with somebody, they'll actually remember you.
Yeah, it depends on how many beers you have. If it's too many, they're not going to remember you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just about all the questions we had written down. So, Cameron, do you have any closing remarks, or where can people learn more about you, get in touch, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So I currently do coaching as under CamTech coaching. So I help struggling, aspiring tech professionals, so people who want to break into tech for their desired tech role, actually break into the industry regardless of their background, their experience, their skill sets. I help with all of that. So yeah, if they're tired of collecting rejection letters or anything like that, then they can go to www.camtech cybersafety.education/work with me, with hyphens in between work with me. And then you'll basically reach the page where you can actually book in a call with me and we can see if I can actually help you. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and just picking your mind a little bit. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks for listening. Just a reminder that the Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Have a cybersecurity question? Send an email to cyberminutespodcast@gmail.com, as we'd love to answer it. Stay cyber safe.